Hi guys. I wanted to talk about the idea of the transformation of the will and how the will relates to the concept of freedom, because obviously they're intimately related, but there are subtle differences and significant differences about the interplay between the two that demand some articulation. The movement of the will in life is usually considered a uh, haphazard thing towards various desires and ends. And this is the basically vision of the will that culture presents to us today, especially in late capitalism, is that ultimately freedom is paramount. Freedom literally meaning that you constantly are faced with just choices everywhere. Whether it be political parties, shampoo brands, uh, whatever machination of of consumer capitalism creates for you to indulge in, again, choice, and that this constant exercise of choice is in fact what freedom is all about and what the will is for, insofar as the will even exists, which a lot of secularists want to deny. There's a different vision of the will, and it's a traditional vision, and it is the vision, I think, associated with all great wisdom traditions in the world, but particularly, again, with Christianity. And that is the idea that the point of the will is actually to, through its own behavior and directionality, determine itself, to actually lose the sense of freedom. I mean, this is the scary end of the line for what salvation is. It's the experience of the will being completely out of control, determined towards something else, unstoppably focused towards an external direction or goal in itself, to the point where it can no longer escape its own trajectory. I mean, this is the vision of the will that is in Dante, at the end of the Paradiso, when, you know, here vigor could not fail the towering fantasy, and yet the will rolled onward like a wheel in even motion by the love impelled that moves the sun in heaven and all the stars. But what is the vision? The vision is that at some point, love as a ontological force becomes so overwhelming to the intellect and to experience that the will becomes absolutely compelled towards love in a particular direction, in a particular way, that it actually loses almost any sense of objective freedom. It's totally responsible for the choice, but the more free it is, as it just it catapults into this directionality of the will, the more determined it is objectively, in a sense, the more free it is inside, because it knows that it's willingly losing control by totally determining itself to love, surrendering. That the actual point of the will is to lose freedom. Ultimately, I mean, ultimately, it's to become a slave to love. I mean, essentially, in a sense. I mean, it's to become a pure receiver of the gift of love through a total kind of slavery to it. I mean, and again, I don't want to imply that this is unpleasant. I think might be, I think part of the story of Christ is that it's unpleasant sometimes in the world, but eventually it becomes the easiest thing in the world, and you just become the funnel, the causal funnel, with which love moves its, like sand through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. I mean, that's where you just let the information flow through love just become you. And the will is ultimately determined. I mean, that's the end of the story for you. I mean, that's the end of your human story, because at that point, whatever drama existed based on your freedom and the negotiation that your freedom had with its own determination to love and to God, then it's over. You've been saved. I mean, you really, that's the beatific vision. It's happened. I mean, there's a sense where I think human stories end because they just become totally compelled by the will to do. The will becomes compelled to do whatever God wants. But you have to start to see the will this way. You have to start to see the will as an object that moves toward a directionality or a goal, towards a determination. It's all about determining yourself as an actually existing unit of existence, with the particular importance of being human, where you have freedom and choice and concepts with which to determine yourself with. But it's unambiguous ultimately which direction to go. I mean, it does come to a head where you either have found the correct qualia shape to determine yourself toward, or you have not. I mean, it literally, when I'm saying it comes to a head, it looks like this, guys. I mean, it's a triangle that we are barreling toward in the Trinity there. It's a point that one's will wants to discover so that it may totally determine itself towards it and release its control and let the information flow in. And that's the point. So I start to think about this in terms of how you experience the word freedom, the concept of freedom, what freedom means to you, and how you sort of negotiate your life and feel your sense of the will. I mean, most things just exhaust our wills. I mean, just the basic existence today is a menagerie of decision-making that has to happen in a way that never existed in human history. And all this does is it depletes and exhausts the will, which is they've shown in, I don't like science studies, but there have been some sociological analysis that show that will seems, and psychological analysis that seem to imply that will is something that can run down. And we all know this from experience. It's really kind of a banal thing to study because we know that if you're just totally exhausted by making 1,000,000 little decisions a day, you're more likely to cheat on dessert if you're on a diet, or cheat a cigarette if you're stressed out, or something like that. This is why rearranging your mind towards thinking about the will as nothing but an object which you are supposed to just not worry about on minutiae levels of decision making, but transform totally into a kind of self-giving release of being, in which all control ultimately is let go of, because you have directed yourself in the right direction, to the right point, towards the right shape. And that's really it. I'm going to be talking more about the will and the problem of the freedom of the will. And the will, of course, is a humongous topic in theology in general, and something we'll spend some time communicating about. But the most important thing about it is to realize that, again, the point of the will is to determine itself. The point of the will is to determine itself. All right, thank you very much, and God bless, guys.